All right, I've seen this video floating around from CNBC titled, "Why Getting a Job Feels Impossible Right Now." And I want to check it out and see what they have to say.
On paper, the job market now looks solid. Unemployment hit a 54-year low at 3.4% back in January of 2023. And U.S. employers added 2.7 million people to the payroll in 2023 alone. The January jobs report also showed the 2024 labor market was off to a solid start.
When we look at the...
Yeah, just from my perspective, and this isn't any like in-depth research or anything, this is just what I've observed myself. It seems like for like higher paying corporate jobs, corporations are definitely being a little more careful than they were right after the pandemic when they were just in like a hiring frenzy and taking anyone they could get. But it still seems like for service level jobs like restaurants, servers, customer service jobs, things like that, I'm still seeing a lot of openings. So when they say the jobs report is good, I'm assuming they're going to say that's true, but some of these higher paying jobs are not as available as they have been in the past.
When we look at the hard data, it seems to suggest that the labor market has been fairly strong and in fact surprisingly resilient, especially after 2023, where we had headlines about layoffs and forecasts of recession. But when you look at the soft data, Americans tend to be a little bit less optimistic about how the economy is doing, and in particular about the job market.
Yeah, that's true. And I think inflation still has a big impact on that. I don't think people are happy with how their wages have increased relative to inflation, which is fair. So yeah, I could definitely see how the perception is a little more negative than maybe what the actual data is showing.
Politicians just talking about how the economy is so great. I just want to scream from the rooftops. Then how come no one can find a job?
Recently, unemployed full-time workers applied to an average of 30 jobs, only to receive an average of 4 callbacks or responses.
I don't have data. That does not seem too bad to me, especially if you're just like cold applying online and just sending in your resume. Let me tell you this, if you're just sending in your resume to a random online job listing and you don't have any connections, or you're not doing any networking, or you're not doing something else to get your foot in the door, you're wasting your time. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. I have never had success just applying to a job online. I've never heard back from one of those. So you've got to get out there, you've got to network, get on LinkedIn, message people, find any connection you can, because that's going to help you a ton. But if you're just cold applying and you're getting 4 interviews for every 30 applications, that actually sounds pretty good and pretty reasonable.
Hi, my name is Jenna Jackson. I'm from Ardmore, Pennsylvania, in the suburbs of Philadelphia. This job market is like the craziest that I have ever seen. I was frustrated just with how my job search process has been going. I haven't quantified how many applications I've applied to.
Yeah, and for her specifically, at the beginning of the video, it said that she was in management consulting. And it does seem like those are some of the jobs that are a little bit more hesitant to hire right now, just because they're higher paying. Companies are a little bit more uncertain about the future. You know, there's not as much demand for that type of labor. Not that there's no jobs. You can still find jobs in that field, but it's definitely cooled off a little bit from where we were 2 or 3 years ago.
55% of unemployed adults said they were burnt out from searching for a new job. Younger generations were
searching for jobs sucks,
with 66% complaining of burnout stemming from job search.
Yeah, I remember that. So when I was in college and I was going to like career fairs and interviewing with companies, there were a lot of good jobs and a lot of good prospects. So it's not like the job market was cold or anything, but I just remember it was exhausting. Like I would go to class and then I would go to information sessions with companies. I would interview with companies. It felt like a full-time job. It sucked. I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, I don't think there's any way around that process, but it is just a draining process. And then if you throw in maybe like a cooled off job market, that can make things a little bit more complicated.
Filling out applications online can be tedious and can be time consuming and can be really stressful.
Every day just feels like Groundhog Day.
I'm going to say it again. If you're just filling out applications online, you're not doing anything else, you're wasting your time. You're not going to find a job that way. Again, you got to network, reach out to people, get on LinkedIn, do whatever you can to establish a connection.
When I looked at the data, if you just applied to a job through a job board, the odds of you getting hired were about 3%.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm shocked that the percentage is that high. Like, you're throwing that thing in online, thousands of people are applying. Again, I don't have the data. I don't know who did this research. I think your odds are worse if you're just cold applying.
So you got to apply to a lot of different jobs in order to have a chance to get them. And you're going to get lots and lots of just no responses.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's exhausting if you do that.
Yeah, that's another good point. Like, rejection just sucks. It's exhausting. It's not fun, but it's just part of the game. So if you're struggling with that, stay strong. You got this. Everyone, no matter how qualified they are, has got rejected from a job. So you just have to learn not to take it personally.
A 2023 study from Glassdoor revealed that mentions of applicants being ghosted by their prospective employers
And to me, this tells me more about like the perception of the job market than what's actually happening. I'm not sure that more recruiters and people that are hiring for jobs, I don't think they're ghosting people in a higher percentage. I think that the perception is just worse. I think that people have not as good of an outlook on the job process, on the job hunt. And that may be for good reason, but I think this stat is more reflective of people's perception than what the actual reality is.
Grew substantially since before the COVID-19 pandemic.
We often hear from job seekers that they send out tons and tons of applications and they don't even hear back. And that can be very emotionally and mentally taxing.
Well, again, if you're sending in an application and they're getting thousands of responses, there's some AI program that's analyzing your resume, looking for keywords, looking for certain experience. So, I mean, it makes sense that you don't hear back. It still sucks. I get it. And it's different if you've interviewed. If you've interviewed and like gone further in the process and they ghost you, then that's not okay, I would say. But if you're just applying and you're not hearing back, that's probably normal.
The application process has been getting longer and longer with going through multiple rounds and doing assessments. My worst experience so far was with a large financial institution where I had a phone screen with them, and I also had a Zoom interview with one of the team members. After that, I had a case study where I was given very vague instructions. They got back to me and said that the team didn't feel like there was enough. They gave me another attempt. In the end, I just ended up just going back to the recruiter and saying, like, I'm sorry, I don't think this is the best fit. Because even if I did move forward and, they were okay with my revision, there still would have been 3 more interviews.
Yeah, so from my experience and from what I've seen, and, we're in different fields, so it probably just depends. But I bet management consulting is somewhat similar. But typically there's, like you said, a screening call with a recruiter where the recruiter is just trying to make sure that it would be a good fit. They're just filtering out if someone seems super unqualified and just kind of acting as a filter before they pass someone on to the hiring team. So if you pass that call with the recruiter, you then usually talk to the hiring manager. So this is typically the person that would be your manager if you did end up working for the company. So you'd have a quick 30-minute call with them. Again, just as another filter to make sure they like you, to make sure that you have at least the minimum qualifications. So after those 2 interviews, then typically what I've seen is you'll go to a final stage where it's a panel that's a couple hours long, where you meet with, a lot of different people on the team, including the manager again. And any other people at the company that they think that you should meet with. And yeah, there's usually like 4 to 6 interviews that you'll have in that one day, but they at least put them all together so that you don't have to like keep coming back for interviews. That seems like a pretty good way to handle it. Again, it's still exhausting to go through, but I think companies at least try to like bundle the interviews together so you don't have to like go there 10 different times.
A lot of employers think that doing more interviews is a good thing, and it's not a good thing. Most job interviews are not doing anything important. They don't know that the questions they're asking are going to reveal anything about whether you're a good candidate or not.
Yeah, it's basically just like a detailed vibe check, right? They want to make sure that you're a good fit for the team, that you're going to work well with people. And I agree that just meeting with the same person over and over again isn't really effective, but I do think that panel strategy that I just mentioned is effective, where you meet with a lot of different people on the team in one set amount of time. That way, you're not wasting too much of your time, you're not wasting too much of their time, but you're meeting with a lot of different people who can then sit and discuss and make a good decision on who to hire. Yeah, instead of just like drilling down with one person, it's good just to get a variety of perspectives and then have a group ultimately come to a decision.
It's the question what the right answer is. And this is a development that's been going on for a while. It's not a good thing for anybody. And even if the labor market was stronger, you would still be seeing some of this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's the amount of interviews that I've seen my whole working career since I graduated from college. Didn't matter if the job market was hot, didn't matter if it was cold.
So many companies had to scale back during the pandemic. And then all at once, companies were able to hire again as their businesses started to move. So you had so many job openings happening all at the same time.
Yeah, and a lot of people react to that and they're like, oh, that's a good thing. But it's actually not. Like, in my opinion, a lot of companies hired very irresponsibly. That's why now we're seeing a lot of layoffs, especially in the tech industry, because these companies could hire again. They had jobs to fill, and they were just taking really anybody and growing their headcount exponentially. And I just think it was growing irresponsibly. They then ended up letting a lot of people go. So I think it's better to have more sustained growth, make sure that you can actually handle the people you're bringing on, regardless of any short-term downturns or anything like that. So I just think companies need to be more responsible about how they go about it.
There's less of a frenzy on the part of the employers. If you're somebody who wants a job, you would like a frenzy on the part of the employers because you would like to have lots of people trying to hire you.
I think one interesting thing about the job market right now is that it is strong, but the hiring rate is low, and similarly, the layoff rate is actually very low.
The layoff and discharge rate in the US has been hovering near historic lows, despite the barrage of layoffs reported specifically within the more visible tech and media sectors.
So maybe I was too general. I guess maybe a lot of companies are being responsible and not laying people off, but you just see a lot of headlines. So I guess that's an example of the media blowing things out of proportion.
In 2022, there was one open job for every active applicant on the LinkedIn platform.
Wow. That's kind of a crazy stat. I did not realize that that is how good the ratio was. That's insane.
2023, the ratio turned to one job for every 2 active applicants.
Okay, I know that's a big difference. Like it's been cut in half now, but that still is better than I thought. Like when I get on LinkedIn, it seems like every job listing there's like 1,000 applicants for it. That's a big decrease for people looking for jobs for sure.
Right now in the marketplace, what we're seeing is both employers and employees being a little bit more selective. Everybody's taking a little bit more of a measured approach right now, being a little bit more selective in their choices. And that's why we've seen a little bit of a cooling in the marketplace.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think companies are being responsible. They don't want to take in more headcount than they can handle. And hopefully that means there's going to be less layoffs in the future. But only time will tell.
However, experts reassure that the cooling labor market is no reason for concern yet.
It is important to have a perspective that's a little more historical on this. You know, if you're hunting for a job right now and you can't find one, it looks like a lousy job market to you. But compared to your parents' experience, it's a great job market.
I think that sentiment is outcomes minus expectations. So in 2021, 2022, there were labor shortages, companies were hiring very aggressively. And so even if 2024 is shaping up to be a relatively healthy labor market, by recent comparison, it doesn't feel quite as strong.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think overall, my take is that the job market right now is pretty good for people looking for jobs. There's still a lot of opportunity. I just learned through this video that layoffs actually are not as prevalent as it might seem. I think that perception is just low just because of how crazy the job market was right after the pandemic when companies were hiring like crazy. And it's definitely cooled off from that. That's just not sustainable for the economy. But perception has taken a hit as people realize that those days are no longer here and the market's cooled off a little bit. But overall, I think the market's strong. I think that if you're smart about the way that you're networking and looking for jobs and connecting with people, then it's definitely possible to find a job right now in this market. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. If you like this, make sure you leave a like button on the video. And I want to hear your thoughts down in the comments. What are your views on the job market right now? Do you think it's a hot job market? Do you think it's a cold job market? Do you disagree with anything I said in this video? Let me know and we'll discuss. Thanks, everyone.